My fiancé's phone rang during our wedding vows with the most romantic, spicy ringtone I'd ever heard. I was standing at the altar, crying happy tears, and looking into the eyes of the man who made me feel seen like nobody ever had. He started his vows and they were beautiful, talking about how I was the sun of his solar system and his favorite notification. Right on cue as he said those exact words, his phone started ringing. But it wasn't just any ringtone. It was Pony by Genuine, the most intimate song I'd ever heard in my life. The grinding beat echoed through the entire church. Every single person in the room turned to stare at us. Norman's face went white like he'd seen a ghost. He fumbled with his jacket pocket. The music kept playing louder and louder. "I'm just a bachelor, looking for a partner," blared through the church speakers somehow. Finally, he pulled it out and silenced it. I stood there in my white dress holding my bouquet, completely frozen. "Who was that?" I asked. Norman's eyes darted around the room. "Wrong number. Probably a spam call." "A spam call? Norman, that's a custom ringtone. You assigned that song to someone specific." I looked right at him. "So who do you have saved with that as their ringtone?" Norman opened his mouth but nothing came out. His best man tried to laugh it off. "Dude probably saved it as a joke for the boys." "Then show me," I said. "Show me the phone. Show me who just called." Norman pulled the phone closer to his chest like he was protecting it. "It's nobody. Can we just continue with the ceremony?" "No, we can't." My voice was louder than I meant it to be. "I'm not saying I do until you tell me who that was." The officiant tried to calm everyone down. "Perhaps we should take a brief pause. Show me the phone, Norman." He stepped back, shaking his head. I grabbed my dress and walked off the altar. Just walked right down the aisle in the opposite direction. Norman followed me, calling my name. "Baby, wait. Please." We ended up in the church lobby with both our families rushing after us. Everyone was talking at once, asking what was happening. I turned to Norman. "Was it another woman? Are you cheating on me?" "No, I swear it's not like that." "Then who was it?" That's when Norman's mom, Jerlyn, pushed through the crowd. "It's his cousin. His cousin Rebecca. She couldn't make it to the wedding because she's overseas." Everyone went quiet. I stared at Jerlyn. "His cousin? You're telling me he has a seg song saved for his cousin?" She started stuttering. They have an inside joke. That's disgusting and you know you're lying." My dad stepped forward. "Son, you better start talking right now." Norman looked at his mom, then at me, panic all over his face. I can't explain right now." My mom started crying. "Did you cheat on my daughter?" His dad grabbed his shoulder. "Norman, what did you do?" I ripped off my veil and threw it on the floor. "I'm not marrying you until you tell me the truth." This was supposed to be the best day of my life, and it was turning into a nightmare. I tried to grab Norman's phone from his hand. He jerked away and the phone slipped from his grip. It flew through the air and landed right in the decorative fountain. Splash. The sound echoed through the whole room. Norman dove his hand into the water and pulled it out, but the screen was completely black. The phone was dead. Norman actually looked relieved, like he was happy I couldn't see who'd called him. "I'm sorry. The phone's ruined. Can we please just move forward with the wedding?" My maid of honor, Claire, stopped everyone. "If that call was just your cousin, why are you so relieved that the phone is dead?" "I want the truth," I said. "Right now, or this wedding is over." Norman was shaking, tears in his eyes. "You have 5 seconds. I can't. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay." Norman finally broke. The whole room went silent. Norman took a shaky breath. "The woman's name is Vanessa." My heart stopped. "Who is Vanessa?" "She's someone from my past." "What does that mean?" His mother started crying, which told me this was really bad. "Vanessa is the mother of my child." The words didn't make sense at first. "What?" "I have a son. He's 4 years old. I never told you." The church lobby exploded. My family was screaming. I couldn't breathe. "You have a child? A 4-year-old child you never mentioned?" But I was still confused. "Why does she have that ringtone?" "I said it years ago when we were together. She never calls me, so I forgot to change it." "But that doesn't explain why you were so panicked." Norman looked like he was about to throw up. "That's not the whole story." My legs felt weak. "What else?" 3 months ago, Vanessa came back to town. We ran into each other at a bar. We slept together. One time. I swear, just once. I felt like someone punched me in the stomach. My dad lunged forward, but my brothers held him back. "Why was she calling you today?" I screamed. Norman couldn't speak. His mother answered for him. "She's pregnant." I felt my knees buckle. "Then how about let's call her?" I pulled my phone out. "Give me her number. Now." Norman stood there frozen like he couldn't move. My dad stepped forward and the look on his face made Norman actually flinch backward. Norman pulled his tablet out of the inside pocket of his suit jacket with shaking hands and unlocked it without saying anything. I grabbed it from him and opened his cloud storage app, scrolling through his backed up contacts until I found her name. Vanessa Wooten. The phone number was right there. I pulled out my phone and dialed. My fingers moving so fast I almost messed up twice. The church lobby had gone completely quiet except for Jerlyn's crying. Everyone was staring at me as I hit the speaker button. 1 ring, 2 rings. Then a woman's voice answered, sounding tired and a little confused. I didn't wait for her to say anything else. "Why are you calling my fiancé on our wedding day?" The silence on the other end lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like forever. "You're what?" Vanessa's voice got louder. Norman told me you guys broke up 2 months ago. He said you ended things and he was moving in with me next week to help with our son and the new baby. The church lobby exploded. My mom gasped so loud it echoed. Norman's dad started yelling at Norman. My brothers were holding my dad back again because he looked ready to actually hit someone. Jerlyn collapsed into a chair, her face in her hands. I kept the phone pressed to my ear, listening to Vanessa breathe on the other end. He told you we broke up? My voice came out weird and high. We've been planning this wedding for 8 months. The invitations went out 3 months ago. Vanessa started cursing in Spanish. Words I didn't understand, but the anger was clear. That lying piece of garbage. He's been at my apartment twice a week, playing with Jasper, talking about being a family. He said you were just a friend who got the wrong idea. I looked at Norman and he was backing away toward the door like he wanted to run. How many other lies? I asked him directly, not Vanessa anymore. How many other things did you tell her that weren't true? Norman opened his mouth, but nothing came out except this weird choking sound. I can fix this, he finally managed to say. Just give me 5 minutes to explain everything privately, and you'll understand. Claire grabbed my arm hard enough that it hurt a little. We're leaving, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. You don't owe him another second of your time. She took my phone and hung up on Vanessa. Then she grabbed my hand and started pulling me toward the exit. My mom rushed over and took my other arm. Savannah appeared next to us with my purse that I'd left at the altar. My dad was still yelling at Norman, but my brothers got him moving toward the door too. Norman tried to follow us, calling my name over and over, but his dad grabbed his shoulder and yanked him backward. Jerlyn was still crying in her chair, saying something about how this wasn't supposed to happen like this, how Norman promised he would handle everything before the wedding. We burst out into the parking lot and the sunlight felt wrong, too bright and normal for what was happening. My mom guided me toward their car, but Claire shook her head. I'll drive her, Claire said. You and Savannah follow us. My dad was already heading to his truck, his face red and his hands in fists. We drove to my parents' house in 3 separate cars, and I was shaking, so hard that my teeth were chattering even though it wasn't cold. Claire kept one hand on the wheel and one hand on my knee, not saying anything, just being there. I watched the streets pass by through the window and nothing looked real. We'd driven this route 1,000 times, but now it felt like a different city, a different life. At my parents' house, everyone rushed inside and my mom pulled me straight to the couch. I finally broke down completely, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe right. My mom held me while my wedding dress got covered in tears and makeup, the white fabric turning gray and streaked. Savannah disappeared into the kitchen and came back with tea that she set on the coffee table, but nobody touched it. My dad paced back and forth across the living room, his phone pressed to his ear, calling relatives and telling them the wedding was off. I could hear him trying to keep his voice steady, but failing. Claire sat down next to me and pulled out her phone, opening the notes app. Reception venue, she said quietly. Caterer, photographer, honeymoon reservations, florist, DJ. We need to cancel everything. My phone started buzzing in my purse. I pulled it out and saw Norman's name on the screen. It buzzed again, and again, and again. I watched it light up over and over, but I didn't answer. Claire took it from my hand and turned off the ringer. You don't have to deal with him right now, she said. The crying eventually stopped, but I felt empty and hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides. My mom brought me water and made me drink it even though I didn't want to. Savannah sat on the floor by my feet, just being close. My dad finished his phone calls and sat down in his chair, his face gray and exhausted. That evening, after everyone had gone quiet and my mom had tried to get me to eat something I couldn't stomach, I finally looked at my phone. 17 missed calls from Norman. 6 voicemails. I put in my earbuds and played the most recent one. Norman's voice came through crying and begging, saying he needed to explain everything, that Vanessa had seduced him when he was vulnerable and confused about our relationship, that he made a mistake but he loved me and only me. He said the thing with Vanessa meant nothing, and he'd been trying to figure out how to tell me about Jasper, but the timing was never right. His voice got higher and more desperate as the message went on. I deleted it without listening to the others. I was done with his excuses and his lies and his version of events where nothing was ever his fault. The next morning, I woke up in my childhood bedroom, and for about 3 seconds I forgot everything that happened. Then I remembered and felt sick. I was still wearing my slip because I couldn't face taking off the wedding dress properly the night before. My mom had helped me out of it and hung it in the closet where I didn't have to look at it. Savannah was asleep in a sleeping bag on my floor, her hair spread out on the pillow she'd brought from the guest room. She'd refused to leave me alone overnight even though I told her I was fine. At 9 in the morning, the doorbell rang and I heard Claire's voice downstairs. She came up to my room carrying coffee and a bag of bagels, still in yesterday's bridesmaid dress because she'd stayed at my parents' house too. I took the whole week off work, she announced, setting the coffee on my dresser. We're going to deal with everything, starting with getting your stuff from the apartment you share with Norman. My dad appeared in the doorway. I'm coming too, he said in a voice that didn't allow for argument. You're not going there without backup. The thought of facing Norman's space made my stomach hurt, but I knew Claire was right. I needed my things, my clothes, my laptop, everything that was mine before it got more complicated. We drove to the apartment in Claire's car because I was still shaking too much to drive myself. My dad followed behind us in his truck, the empty bed ready to haul whatever I needed to take. The drive took 20 minutes and nobody said much. Claire kept glancing at me like she was worried I might fall apart, but I felt weirdly calm now that I had a task to focus on. When we pulled up to the building where Norman and I had lived together for 2 years, my stomach twisted. I'd been so excited to move in here, thinking it was the start of our forever. The apartment was on the 3rd floor and I used my key to let us in. Norman wasn't home, which I'd expected since he was probably at his parents' place dealing with the mess he'd created. The apartment looked exactly like it always did. Clean kitchen, couch where we'd watched movies, the coffee table where we'd eaten dinner together 1,000 times. But now I was looking at everything differently, searching for clues I'd missed. Claire went straight to the bedroom to start packing my clothes. My dad stood in the living room looking around with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. I started opening drawers in the kitchen, not even sure what I was looking for. In the drawer by the phone, I found a second charger. Not the one I used for my phone, but an iPhone charger when Norman had an Android. I'd seen it before and never questioned it. Now I realized it was probably for Vanessa's phone when she came over. My hands started shaking again. I moved to the desk where we kept our bills and paperwork. I pulled out our credit card statements from the past 6 months and started flipping through them. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to. A hotel stay in March when Norman said he was at a work conference. Purchases at a toy store. My dad came over and looked at the papers in my hands. He didn't say anything, but his face got red. I grabbed all the statements and shoved them in my purse. Claire called from the bedroom and we both went to see what she'd found. She was standing in front of Norman's closet holding a cardboard box. Inside were greeting cards, maybe 20 of them. I picked up the first one and opened it. The front had a drawing of a dinosaur in crayon. Inside, in a child's handwriting with help from an adult, it said, "Happy birthday, Daddy. I love you." From Jasper. The date was from 2 years ago. I picked up another one. "Happy Father's Day, Daddy." With a stick figure drawing of 2 people holding hands. Another one. "I miss you, Daddy. When are you coming to visit?" I sat down on the bed because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. Norman had been getting these cards for years. He'd been reading his son's messages and keeping them hidden in a box in our shared closet, while he kissed me goodnight and talked about our future kids. Claire sat next to me and put her arm around my shoulders. My dad took the box and looked through more cards, his face getting darker with each one. I stood up and started grabbing my clothes from the closet, yanking hangers down and throwing everything on the bed. I wasn't being careful anymore. I just wanted out of this apartment that suddenly felt like it was full of lies in every corner. Claire helped me pack while my dad carried boxes down to the truck. On her 3rd trip back from the truck, Claire stopped in the doorway. She was looking at Norman's laptop sitting on the desk in the corner. It was open and the screen was lit up. I walked over and moved the mouse. The screen came to life and I realized Norman hadn't logged out. His email was right there, open and accessible. Claire came to stand next to me. "You should look," she said quietly, "before he gets a chance to delete anything." I knew she was right. I sat down and started scrolling through his inbox. There were dozens of emails from Vanessa going back months. I clicked on the most recent one from 3 weeks ago. It was about their son's preschool graduation and whether Norman would be attending. Vanessa had written that Jasper kept asking if Daddy would be there to see him get his certificate. Norman's response said he'd try, but he was busy with wedding planning. Wedding planning. I felt sick. I kept scrolling and clicking. There were emails about doctor appointments for Jasper. Emails about child support payments that were late. Emails where Vanessa asked when Norman was going to tell me the truth. I found one from 2 months ago that made me stop breathing. Vanessa had written asking if Norman was sure about his plan. Norman's response was 3 paragraphs long. He said he needed to go through with the wedding to keep his parents happy, because they'd already paid for half of it, and his mom would never forgive him if he embarrassed the family. He said after the honeymoon he'd tell me he'd made a mistake and file for divorce quickly. He told Vanessa he'd move in with her and Jasper by the end of the summer, and they could finally be a real family. He said marrying me was just something he had to get through first. I read it 3 times. Each time felt worse than the last. Claire read over my shoulder and I heard her sharp intake of breath. My dad came back upstairs and saw us at the computer. He read the email too. Then he walked to the kitchen and I heard him punch the cabinet door. The bang echoed through the apartment. I started clicking through more emails, my hands moving faster now. There were so many. Norman and Vanessa had been talking constantly for months. She'd sent him ultrasound pictures of the new baby. He'd responded with heart emojis. There were emails planning their future together, talking about finding a bigger place for all of them, discussing baby names. While he was doing this, he was coming home to me every night and talking about our honeymoon plans. Claire grabbed a flash drive from her purse. "Forward these to yourself," she said. "All of them. And let me copy them too." I created a new folder and started dragging emails into it. I forwarded the whole folder to my personal email address. Then I copied everything onto Claire's flash drive. My dad found the printer and started printing out the worst emails, the ones that showed Norman's plan most clearly. The printer churned out page after page of evidence. I kept searching through the laptop. I found his text message backup and saw months of conversations with Vanessa that matched the emails. Sweet messages, intimate messages, messages about their son and their life together, messages sent while he was sitting next to me on the couch. I found photos on his computer, pictures of Jasper at the park, at his birthday party, playing in a backyard I didn't recognize. Norman had a whole separate life documented in digital files that I'd never seen. When we'd packed everything I owned and printed every important email, we left. I didn't leave a note. I didn't close the laptop. I wanted Norman to come home and see that I'd found everything. We loaded the last boxes into my dad's truck and drove back to my parents' house. It was almost noon by then, and I felt exhausted like I'd been awake for days. Back at my parents' house, Savannah was waiting in the kitchen. She'd made sandwiches that nobody was eating and coffee that was getting cold. I spread all the printed emails out on the dining room table. Savannah came to look and her eyes got huge. We spent the next hour going through everything, organizing it by date, building a timeline. Savannah took notes on her laptop, creating a document that tracked every lie. The affair with Vanessa wasn't just 3 months ago like Norman claimed. They'd been sleeping together on and off for the entire 4 years I'd been with Norman. There were gaps where they weren't in contact, but then they'd start up again. The longest gap was about 8 months last year, right when Norman proposed to me. Then 3 months later, the emails started again. My mom came in and saw what we were doing. She sat down and started reading, her face getting pale. When she finished, she got up and made a phone call. I heard her in the kitchen talking to the wedding venue coordinator, explaining that we needed to cancel everything. She came back 15 minutes later and sat next to me. "They're refunding most of the deposit," she said. The coordinator was very understanding. She said this happens more than people think. I felt a tiny bit of relief. At least that was one less thing to worry about. That evening, the doorbell rang. My dad went to answer it, and I heard Norman's voice in the entryway. I stood up and walked to the living room window where I could see the front door. Norman was on the porch trying to get past my dad. My dad had one arm braced against the door frame, blocking the entrance. I couldn't hear everything they were saying, but I saw my dad's mouth moving, his voice firm and angry. Norman tried to push forward, and my dad put a hand on his chest, stopping him. Then my dad said something that made Norman step back. Norman was crying, his face red and twisted. My dad pointed down the driveway. Norman stood there for another minute, then turned and walked away. My dad came back inside and locked the door. "I told him to communicate through lawyers from now on," he said. "He's not welcome here." An hour later, my mom's phone rang. She looked at the screen and showed it to me. "Jerlyn." My mom answered and put it on speaker. Jerlyn's voice came through, sobbing and barely understandable. She was apologizing, saying she'd told Norman he needed to tell me the truth before the wedding. She said she'd begged him to be honest, but he kept promising he would handle it. She said she never meant for it to happen like this. I listened to her cry for about 30 seconds. Then I looked at my mom and said, "Hang up." My mom ended the call. Jerlyn tried calling back twice, but my mom didn't answer. The next day, Claire came over again with her laptop. We sat at the dining room table and logged into the joint bank account Norman and I shared. I'd been putting money into it every month for 2 years, saving for the wedding and our future. Norman had access to the same account. Claire pulled up the transaction history, and we started going through it month by month. In January, there was a transfer to Vanessa for $1,500. In February, another $1,000. In March, $2,000. The amounts varied, but they were there almost every month, sometimes multiple times a month. Money from our shared account, money I'd deposited thinking it was going toward our wedding and our life together, had been going to support Norman's other family. Claire added up the total. Over the past year alone, Norman had sent Vanessa more than $18,000 from our joint funds. I felt like I might throw up. That money was supposed to pay for our honeymoon, for furniture for the house we'd planned to buy. Instead, Norman had been using it to support the life he was planning to leave me for. I stared at the number Claire had written down. $18,000. My hands started shaking. That was supposed to be our honeymoon in Greece. That was the down payment we'd been saving for a house. I felt sick to my stomach thinking about how I'd skipped buying new work clothes and eaten leftovers for lunch every day to add extra money to that account. Norman had been taking it and sending it to another woman while I was planning our wedding. Claire put her hand on my shoulder, but I barely felt it. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was right there in black and white. Transaction after transaction. Proof that he'd been stealing from our future to build a different one without me. I added up the numbers again in my head, hoping I'd made a mistake, but it came out the same. $15,000 minimum over the past year alone. Probably more if I went back further. Claire closed the laptop and looked at me. "We need to protect what's left. Right now." I nodded because she was right. Norman still had access to that account. He could drain everything before I even had a chance to stop him. We grabbed my purse and keys and drove straight to the bank. It was almost closing time, but we made it with 10 minutes to spare. The woman at the desk looked confused when I explained I needed to open a new account immediately and transfer money from a joint account. She asked if everything was okay, and I said my wedding got called off and I needed to separate my finances. Her expression changed to sympathy, and she moved faster after that. We opened a new checking account in just my name. Then we transferred exactly half of what was left in the joint account. Norman had already taken, so much that my half only came to about $4,000. The woman helped me remove myself as an authorized user on Norman's credit cards too. She said I should also cancel the joint card to protect my credit score. I did it right there, watching her type on her computer. Every click felt like taking back a tiny piece of control. When we left the bank, I felt exhausted, but also relieved. At least Norman couldn't take anything else from me now. Back at my parents' house, Savannah was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a notebook covered in writing. She looked up when we walked in. "I found 3 family lawyers who do free consultations. I already called and made appointments for you. Tomorrow at 10, Thursday at 2, and Friday at 11. I stared at her. My little sister, who usually couldn't remember to return my calls, had just organized my entire week. She saw my expression and shrugged. "You're dealing with enough. I can handle phone calls and scheduling, I hugged her and she hugged me back hard. For the first time since the wedding disaster, I felt like maybe I could actually get through this. The next few days blurred together. I met with all 3 lawyers and picked the one who seemed most straightforward about what I could realistically recover. She said the money Norman took from our joint account would be hard to get back since it was technically his money too, but we could try. She also said any wedding expenses I'd paid personally, or that my family had paid, could potentially be recovered through small claims court. My dad said he'd pay her fee because he wanted Norman to face consequences. I spent my time at my parents' house, avoiding Norman's calls and texts. He tried everything from apologies to anger to guilt trips. I blocked his number after the 15th message. 4 days after the wedding that never happened, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? A woman's voice came through, quiet and tired. Is this the woman who was supposed to marry Norman? My stomach dropped. Yes. Who is this? It's Vanessa. I think we need to talk. In person. There are things Norman doesn't want you to know, and you deserve to hear them. I looked at Claire, who was sitting across from me. She nodded. Okay. When and where? We agreed to meet at a coffee shop the next morning. Vanessa said she'd be wearing a blue jacket. I told her I'd bring my friend for support, and she said that was fine. After I hung up, Claire asked what I thought Vanessa wanted to tell me. I had no idea, but I knew I had to find out. That night, I barely slept. I kept wondering what else Norman had lied about. What other secrets were waiting to come out? The next morning, Claire and I got to the coffee shop 15 minutes early. We picked a table in the back corner where we could see the entrance. At exactly 10 o'clock, a woman walked in wearing a blue jacket. She was younger than I expected. Way younger. She looked around the coffee shop and our eyes met. I raised my hand slightly and she walked over. Vanessa looked tired. Her face was pale and she had dark circles under her eyes. Her pregnant belly was obvious under her jacket. She sat down across from us and immediately said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I wanted to hate her, but she looked so miserable that I couldn't quite get there. Didn't know what? That you two were really together. Norman told me you'd broken up 2 months ago. He said you were just friends who'd tried dating, but it didn't work out. He said he was free to be with me and our family. Claire made a disgusted noise. Vanessa kept talking. I know how this sounds. I know you probably think I'm lying, but I can prove it. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Then she turned it toward me. Text messages. Hundreds of them. From Norman. I started reading. The messages went back years. In some of them, Norman called me his roommate. In others, he said I was a friend who was helping him with rent. Then the story changed, and I became a casual girlfriend who knew about Vanessa and was okay with it. Then I was someone he was leaving soon. The lies built on top of each other. Message after message. Creating a whole fake story. Vanessa scrolled slowly so I could read. He told me you knew about Jasper. He said you just didn't want to be involved with his son, which I thought was weird. But I figured it was your choice. He said once you two officially broke up, he'd move in with us and we'd be a real family. I felt like I was watching my entire relationship get rewritten in front of me. Every message showed Norman telling Vanessa the exact opposite of what he'd told me. She thought she was the primary relationship. I thought I was the primary relationship. We were both wrong. He played us both, I said. Vanessa nodded, tears in her eyes. My son asks about his daddy all the time. Norman shows up when it's convenient for him, stays for a few days, then disappears for weeks. Jasper doesn't understand why daddy keeps leaving. He thinks he did something wrong. Her voice broke on the last words. I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about me versus Vanessa anymore. We were both victims of the same person. Claire leaned forward. Has Norman been supporting you and your son financially? Vanessa laughed bitterly. Barely. He sends money sometimes, but it's never consistent. He promises to help with bills and then doesn't. I'm working 2 jobs while pregnant because I can't count on him for anything. He says he'll do better, but he never does. I thought about the $18,000 Norman had taken from our joint account. Money that was supposed to go to his child but apparently didn't. Where had it all gone? We sat there for another hour, comparing notes, filling in the gaps in each other's stories. Vanessa showed me pictures of Jasper. He was a cute kid with Norman's eyes. She told me about the pregnancy, how Norman had promised to be there for this baby, but she didn't believe him anymore. She was tired of the lies and the broken promises. Before we left, we exchanged phone numbers. Vanessa said she'd keep me updated on the pregnancy and the paternity test, though she was sure this baby was Norman's based on timing. Claire told her she should talk to a lawyer about formal custody and child support. Vanessa said she'd been thinking about that. As we walked to the car, Claire said, "You handled that really well. I thought you'd be angrier." I shrugged. I'm angry at Norman, not at her. She got lied to just like I did. That evening, I was at my parents' house making dinner when my phone rang. New number. I answered without thinking. Norman's voice exploded through the speaker. What the hell do you think you're doing talking to Vanessa behind my back? You're trying to turn her against me. You're trying to destroy my relationship with my children. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The audacity was amazing. I'm not doing anything to you, Norman. Vanessa called me. And she's not against you. She's just finally seeing who you really are. You have no right to interfere in my family. Your family? Which family, Norman? The one you were building with me? Or the one you were building with her? Because you can't have both. He started yelling about how I was being unfair and unreasonable. How I was overreacting to one mistake. How if I really loved him, I'd forgive him, and we could work this out. I hung up while he was mid-sentence and blocked the new number too. My dad looked at me from across the kitchen. You okay? I nodded. For the first time in days, I actually was. The next morning, I had my first appointment with a family lawyer that Savannah had found. Claire drove me there because I still felt shaky about everything. The office was in a tall building downtown with glass windows and fancy furniture in the waiting room. A woman came out to greet us. She was maybe 50 years old with short gray hair and a firm handshake. She led me back to her office while Claire stayed in the waiting area. I sat down across from her desk and pulled out the folder of printed emails and bank statements I'd brought. She put on reading glasses and started going through everything page by page. Her face stayed neutral, but she made notes on a yellow legal pad. After about 20 minutes, she looked up at me. She said the emails showing Norman's plan to leave me after the wedding were strong evidence of fraud. The bank statements proving he took money from our joint account made my case even better. She explained that even though we weren't married, I had solid civil claims for fraud and financial damages. She could help me file a lawsuit to recover the money he took. I asked how much it would cost and how long it would take. She said her retainer was $3,000 and the case could take 6 months to a year, depending on whether Norman fought it or settled. But she thought I had a good chance of winning. Then she started talking about the wedding expenses. She said any money I paid with my own funds or that my family contributed could potentially be recovered through small claims court. It would be time-consuming and emotionally draining to pursue. She'd seen cases like this get messy when the other party refused to cooperate. Norman could drag it out, miss court dates, claim he didn't have the money, but legally I had the right to try. I sat there thinking about all the money my parents had put toward the wedding. The deposit on the venue, the catering, the flowers. My dress alone cost $2,000. I looked at the lawyer and told her I wanted to pursue everything. Norman shouldn't get away with stealing from me and my family just because dealing with it would be hard. She nodded and said she'd start drafting the paperwork. We scheduled another appointment for the following week to review everything before filing. When I got back to the waiting room, Claire stood up immediately. She asked how it went. I told her the lawyer thought I had a strong case. Claire hugged me and said she was proud of me for taking action instead of just accepting what Norman did. We drove back to my parents' house and I felt lighter somehow. Like I was finally doing something instead of just reacting to Norman's choices. That afternoon, I was sitting on my parents' couch looking at apartment listings on my laptop when my email pinged. New message from Norman. My stomach dropped. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won. I opened it. The email was long. Really long. Paragraphs and paragraphs of words. He started by apologizing for everything. He said he was scared to tell me about his son because he thought I'd leave him. He loved me so much and couldn't bear to lose me. The affair with Vanessa was a moment of weakness when he was stressed about the wedding. He felt overwhelmed by the pressure and made a terrible mistake. He knew he should have told me about everything from the beginning, but he was a coward. He wanted another chance to prove he could be the man I deserved. We could go to therapy together. He'd do anything to fix this. He wrote about all our good memories together, the trips we took, the inside jokes we shared, how I was his best friend and his soulmate. He couldn't imagine his life without me. Please just give him one more chance to make this right. The email went on and on. I read the whole thing and felt nothing but anger. Not one word took real responsibility. Everything was about his fear, his stress, his feelings. He called cheating a moment of weakness like it was something that just happened to him instead of a choice he made. He hid a whole child from me for 4 years, but somehow that was about being scared instead of being a liar. His inability to actually own what he did was almost impressive. I closed the laptop and walked to my old bedroom. I sat at the desk where I used to do homework in high school and opened my email on my phone. I hit reply. I typed one sentence. Have your lawyer contact my lawyer. Then I copied and pasted the attorney's name and contact information. I hit send. Then I went into my email settings and blocked Norman's address. I blocked his phone number again too in case he tried calling from a different phone. I was done being accessible to his manipulation. Savannah knocked on my door and came in. She asked if I was okay. I told her what Norman had sent and how I responded. She said that was perfect. Short and clear with no room for him to twist my words. Then she sat down on my bed and pulled out her phone. She said we should start looking for apartments because I couldn't stay at our parents' house forever. I needed my own space to start fresh. We spent the next 2 hours scrolling through listings. Most were too expensive or in bad neighborhoods. But then Savannah found a small one-bedroom in a neighborhood I'd always loved. It had hardwood floors and big windows and was available immediately. The rent was reasonable. I called the landlord right away and scheduled a viewing for the next day. My parents said they'd help with the deposit and first month's rent. The next morning, Savannah and I drove to see the apartment. It was on the 3rd floor of an older building with a coffee shop on the corner. The landlord met us outside. He was an older man who'd owned the building for 30 years. He walked us up the stairs and unlocked the door. The apartment was small but bright. The kitchen had white cabinets and black countertops. The bedroom fit a queen bed with room for a dresser. The bathroom was tiny but clean. I walked around touching the walls and looking out the windows. This could be mine. My own space with no Norman. No lies. No memories of the life I thought I was building. Savannah stood next to me and asked what I thought. I told the landlord I'd take it. He had me fill out an application right there. He said he'd run my credit and call me by the end of the day. We drove home and I felt excited for the first time in weeks. That evening the landlord called. My application was approved. I could move in on Saturday. My parents celebrated with me over dinner. My dad said he was proud of how I was handling everything. 3 days later, Claire and Savannah showed up with a borrowed truck to help me move. I didn't have much since most of the furniture in the apartment I shared with Norman was his, but Claire had extra dishes and towels. Savannah brought an old coffee maker and some pots and pans. My parents gave me their spare TV. We made trip after trip up the 3 flights of stairs carrying boxes and bags. By evening, the apartment was full of mismatched furniture and kitchen supplies, but it was mine. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor eating because I didn't have a table yet. Claire raised her paper cup of soda and said we should make a toast to new beginnings and leaving liars behind. We all clinked our cups together. After they left, I walked around my empty apartment. I was 32 years old, starting completely over. But I was doing it on my own terms without Norman's lies everywhere. That felt like something worth celebrating, even if it was scary. I made up my bed with new sheets and fell asleep in my own space for the first time. 2 days later, someone knocked on my door around 7 in the evening. I looked through the peephole and saw Jerlyn standing in the hallway. I almost didn't open the door, but curiosity made me turn the lock. Jerlyn looked terrible. Her hair wasn't styled like usual. She had dark circles under her eyes. She wasn't wearing makeup. She asked if she could come in. I stepped back and let her into my tiny living room. She looked around at my sparse furniture and boxes I hadn't unpacked yet. Then she turned to me and apologized. Not the fake apology from the church. A real one. She said she should have forced Norman to tell me about his son years ago. She knew it was wrong to keep that secret. She pressured Norman to hide it because she was ashamed her son had a child out of wedlock. She cared more about appearances than doing the right thing. Now she saw how much damage that choice caused. I stood there with my arms crossed, not saying anything. Jerlyn kept talking. She said she and Norman's dad didn't know about the recent affair with Vanessa or the pregnancy until the wedding day. They knew about the 4-year-old son, but not that Norman was still involved with Vanessa. When they found out everything at the church, they were shocked. She'd been fighting with Norman ever since about his choices. Her honesty didn't excuse anything, but it was more than Norman had given me. I asked her why she came here. Jerlyn reached into her purse and pulled out her checkbook. She said she wanted to pay back some of the money Norman took from our joint accounts. She had access to his trust fund and could transfer money directly to me. She wrote out a check for $8,000 and held it out. I stared at it. I told her I'd need to think about it and talk to my lawyer first. She nodded and set the check on my kitchen counter. Then she left without saying anything else. I picked up the check and looked at the amount. $8,000 wouldn't cover everything Norman took, but it was something. I put it in a drawer and texted my lawyer about what happened. 2 weeks after the wedding, that wasn't. I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Norman's best man. He said his name was Axel and asked if we could talk. I almost blocked the number but decided to hear him out. He called me 10 minutes later. He apologized for not warning me about Norman's secrets. He said he knew about the 4-year-old son, but not about the ongoing affair with Vanessa. Norman told him years ago that he had a kid, but swore he'd told me about it and I was okay with everything. Axel believed him because why would Norman lie about that? Now he realized Norman had been lying to everyone about everything. He felt guilty for not questioning it more, or reaching out to me directly to make sure I actually knew. Several of Norman's friends were distancing themselves since the wedding disaster. They were disgusted by how he handled everything. Norman was apparently spiraling, missing work and drinking heavily. But Axel said that wasn't my problem to fix. I thanked him for calling and hung up. The conversation with Axel stayed in my head for the rest of the day. Norman's friends were backing away from him. People who stood up at our wedding rehearsal dinner and gave speeches about what a great guy he was. Now they couldn't even look at him without feeling disgusted. Part of me felt satisfied hearing that. Another part felt nothing at all. I made myself dinner and sat on my couch staring at the wall. My phone buzzed with a text from Savannah asking if I was okay. I told her I was fine and needed some space. That was mostly true. The next morning, I called the therapist's office that Claire had recommended. The receptionist scheduled me for that same afternoon with Isabella Parsons. I showed up 15 minutes early and filled out paperwork asking about my mental health history and what brought me in. I wrote, "Canceled wedding due to fiancé's betrayal," in the reason for visit section. Isabella called me back right on time. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with kind eyes and a calm voice. Her office had soft lighting and comfortable chairs. She asked me to tell her what happened. I started from the beginning with the phone call during the ceremony. The words came out easier than I thought they would. Isabella listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked how I was sleeping and eating. I admitted both were terrible. She said that was normal for betrayal trauma. We spent the rest of the hour talking about what betrayal trauma actually means. She explained it wasn't just about being sad or angry. It was about having your whole reality shattered. Everything I thought I knew about Norman and our relationship was a lie. My brain was trying to process that while also grieving the future I'd lost. She asked about Vanessa and Jasper. I told her I felt weird sympathy for them. They didn't ask for any of this either. Isabella said that showed emotional maturity. Not everyone could separate their anger at Norman from the innocent people caught in his mess. By the time I left, I felt slightly less like I was drowning. I scheduled another appointment for the following week. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Norman had missed his scheduled visit with Jasper again. Her son had cried for an hour asking why Daddy didn't love him anymore. She was tired of making excuses for Norman. She was thinking about taking him to court for formal custody and child support instead of their informal arrangement. I read the message 3 times. That poor kid. 4 years old and already learning that his father was unreliable. I texted back immediately. I told her she should absolutely get a lawyer and formalize everything. Norman wasn't going to change on his own. He needed legal consequences to force him to act right. I offered to share my attorney's contact information since she'd been helpful and straightforward with me. Vanessa responded within minutes. She thanked me and said she never expected Norman's ex to be kinder to her than Norman was. I sent her my lawyer's name and number. Then I texted my lawyer to give her a heads up that Vanessa might call. My lawyer responded that she'd be happy to refer Vanessa to a good family law attorney in her firm. 3 weeks after the wedding disaster, my lawyer sent Norman's lawyer a formal demand letter. She requested return of the $15,000 he took from our joint accounts. She also asked for half of the wedding expenses my family had paid. The total came to around $25,000. Norman's lawyer responded 2 days later with a settlement offer of $5,000. My attorney called me to discuss it. She said it was a lowball offer and she strongly advised rejecting it. We had solid evidence of Norman taking money from our joint accounts. We had receipts for wedding expenses. Norman's lawyer was testing to see if I'd take an easy settlement. I told her to reject it. I wanted to fight this. A week later, we filed a civil lawsuit against Norman for fraud and financial damages. My lawyer warned me it could take months to resolve. Court dates got scheduled slowly. Norman could drag things out if he wanted to. But I didn't care. I was taking action instead of being a victim. The lawsuit felt empowering. I had some control back. Norman showed up at my apartment building drunk on a Tuesday night around 11. I was already in bed when my intercom started buzzing repeatedly. I got up and pressed the button to hear who it was. Norman's voice came through slurred and angry. He was yelling that I was ruining his life. I'd turned everyone against him. I was suing him for money he didn't have. His words ran together and made barely any sense. I told him to leave or I'd call the police. He kept buzzing and yelling. Other tenants started complaining. Building security came and removed him from the lobby. I watched from my window as they walked him to the street. Norman stumbled and nearly fell. Security waited until he got in his car. I called the non-emergency police line to report it. They said they'd send an officer to take a statement. The next morning, I went straight to the courthouse. I filed for a restraining order against Norman. I brought my phone with a recording of his drunken rant from the intercom. I brought the police report from the night before. I filled out forms describing Norman's harassment and my fear for my safety. The clerk told me a judge would review it within 24 hours. The restraining order got granted the next day. The judge reviewed the evidence and decided Norman posed a credible threat. My lawyer called to tell me the news. She said this actually strengthened my civil case. It showed a pattern of unstable and aggressive conduct. Norman was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me. He couldn't contact me directly or through third parties. If he violated it, he'd face criminal charges. My lawyer had the order served to Norman at his work. I felt safer knowing there were legal consequences if he came near me again. 5 weeks after the wedding, Vanessa texted me from the hospital. She was in labor and having a girl. Norman was there, but apparently more focused on his phone than supporting her. She sounded exhausted with him in every way possible. I texted back wishing her luck and telling her she was strong. She sent a heart emoji. 3 hours later, another text came through. The baby was born healthy. Vanessa named her Scarlett. She attached a photo. A tiny baby with dark hair and scrunched-up face. I stared at the picture for a long time. This innocent child would grow up with Norman as a father. She'd deal with all his dysfunction and broken promises. She'd probably cry someday asking why Daddy didn't show up like Jasper did. I felt genuinely sad for her. Not angry or bitter. Just sad that another kid was stuck with Norman's mess. 2 days after the baby was born, my phone buzzed with a text from Jerlyn. She said Cyrus visited the hospital and finally told Norman he was ashamed of the man his son had become. She said Cyrus was disgusted by all the lying and manipulation. I read the message twice and didn't respond. It felt weird getting updates from Jerlyn about their family drama. This wasn't my fight to win anymore. But I won't lie. It felt good knowing even Norman's own father was calling him out. The next morning, I had my regular therapy session with Isabella. I sat in her office feeling exhausted from weeks of processing everything. She asked me what I was thinking about, and I told her I kept wondering if I'd missed signs, or failed to be enough for Norman. Isabella stopped me right there. She said Norman's betrayal wasn't about me being insufficient or failing somehow. It was about his character and his choices. She explained that no amount of love from me could have fixed his willingness to lie and manipulate everyone around him. That hit me hard in a good way. I'd been carrying guilt that maybe if I'd been different or better, Norman wouldn't have cheated. But Isabella helped me see that was backwards thinking. Norman made his choices because of who he was, not because of anything I lacked. I left that session feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The lawsuit moved forward faster than I expected. My lawyer called to say Norman's lawyer contacted her suggesting mediation to avoid going to court. She thought we had a strong case and could likely get most of what we were asking for through settlement talks. She explained that mediation would be faster and cheaper than a trial. I agreed to try it because I wanted this resolved and behind me. 6 weeks after the wedding disaster, I walked into the mediation office downtown. My lawyer met me in the lobby and we went upstairs together. Norman was already there with his lawyer. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight and had dark circles under his eyes like he wasn't sleeping. His suit hung loose on him. I felt nothing looking at him except relief that I wasn't responsible for him anymore. We sat down at a conference table with a mediator between us. Norman tried to make eye contact with me, but I looked at my lawyer instead. The mediator explained how the process would work and asked Norman's lawyer to present their position first. His lawyer started talking about Norman's financial situation. She pulled out bank statements and pay stubs showing Norman was genuinely broke after supporting 2 households and paying for Vanessa's medical expenses. She argued that Norman couldn't afford to pay me back what I was asking for. My lawyer jumped in immediately. She said Norman created this situation through his own choices and still owed me compensation for the money he stole from our joint accounts and the wedding expenses my family paid. She presented our documentation showing exactly how much Norman had taken. The mediator asked Norman directly why he took money from our joint account without telling me. Norman stumbled over his words, saying he was trying to support his son and didn't know how to tell me. My lawyer pointed out that he could have told me about his son years ago instead of lying and stealing. We went back and forth for 2 hours. Norman's lawyer kept saying he couldn't pay. My lawyer kept showing proof of what he owed. Finally, the mediator suggested we take a break and think about possible compromises. During the break, my lawyer told me we could push for a trial and probably win more, but it would take months and cost more in legal fees. She thought we should try to settle today if possible. When we came back, Norman's lawyer made an offer. Norman would pay me $12,000 in installments over 2 years. His parents would contribute an additional $8,000 immediately to cover what he couldn't pay now. It wasn't everything I'd asked for, but it was something. My lawyer looked at me and I nodded. I was ready to be done with all of this. We signed the settlement agreement right there. Jerlyn transferred the $8,000 to my account that same afternoon. She sent a note with the transfer saying she hoped I could eventually forgive her for her role in enabling Norman's deception. I stared at the message for a while. I wasn't ready to forgive her yet. Maybe I never would be. But I didn't delete the message either. I just left it there and closed my banking app. The next week, Vanessa texted me that she officially filed for full custody and child support through the courts. She said Norman's lawyer tried to argue he couldn't afford proper support given his financial obligations to me. The judge apparently wasn't sympathetic to Norman's self-created problems. The court ordered him to pay substantial child support for both kids. Vanessa sounded relieved in her messages. She said maybe now Norman would finally have to grow up and be responsible. I started thinking about dating again. Not anything serious, just testing if I could trust people after everything that happened. Claire set me up with a friend of her husband's. We went to dinner and he was nice enough, but I felt anxious the whole time. I kept wondering what he might be hiding. Isabella told me that was normal and healing isn't a straight line. She reminded me I was making progress even when it didn't feel like it. I went on 2 more dates with different guys that friends introduced me to. One was boring and talked about himself the entire time. The other one was actually interesting and funny, but I wasn't ready for anything beyond casual conversation. 7 weeks after the wedding disaster, I met Claire and Savannah for coffee at our favorite place downtown. We sat outside in the sunshine and talked about normal stuff. Savannah told a story about her coworker who accidentally sent a text meant for her boyfriend to their entire office group chat. Claire laughed so hard she snorted her latte. I realized I was genuinely laughing too, not forcing it or faking it. Actually laughing about something silly and meaningless. We stayed there for 2 hours just talking and joking around. When I got home that evening, I thought about how different I felt compared to 6 weeks ago. I wasn't obsessing over Norman or replaying everything in my head constantly. I was starting to have moments where I forgot about him entirely. It felt like the beginning of actually moving forward instead of just surviving each day. 8 weeks after everything fell apart, I checked my bank account and saw Norman's first payment sitting there. The full amount he promised in the settlement. I stared at the transaction for a minute because I honestly expected him to be late or short on the money. That same afternoon, Vanessa sent me a text saying the court hearing went through and Norman got ordered to pay substantial child support for both kids. She said he picked up weekend shifts at a second job and was actually showing up for his scheduled visits with Jasper. I texted back asking how she was doing with the baby, and she said tired but managing better now that money wasn't so tight. It felt strange getting updates about Norman's life like this, through Vanessa instead of directly, but also somehow easier. I wasn't responsible for fixing him anymore. 3 days later, I stopped at my usual coffee place to grab something before meeting Claire for lunch. I was waiting for my order when someone called my name. I turned around and saw Axel sitting at a corner table with his laptop. He waved me over and I walked to his table, feeling awkward, but not angry. He asked how I was doing and I told him honestly that I was okay, better than I expected to be. He nodded and said he was glad, then mentioned that Norman was going to therapy now. Twice a week, apparently. I raised my eyebrows at that and Axel shrugged. He said Norman's lawyer probably told him it would look good in court, and he wasn't sure if Norman was actually working on himself or just performing change to seem better on paper. I appreciated Axel's honesty about his skepticism. We talked for maybe 10 minutes about normal stuff, his job and my new apartment, before my order came up. He said to text him if I ever needed anything, and I believed he meant it. 2 months after the wedding that never happened, my parents invited me over for dinner. When I got there, Savannah's car was already in the driveway along with my aunt and uncles. I walked in and realized they'd turned it into a small celebration for my new place and fresh start. My mom made my favorite meal, and my dad kept refilling my water glass like I was still 12. After we ate, Savannah stood up and cleared her throat. She said she wanted to make a toast. She talked about how proud she was of how I handled everything with dignity and strength, never letting Norman's mess turn me into someone bitter or mean. My aunt started crying happy tears, and my dad squeezed my shoulder. I felt genuinely supported and loved by these people in ways that made Norman's absence feel less painful. Like maybe I'd been so focused on building a life with him that I forgot how much family I already had. That night, I sat in my apartment on the couch I'd picked out myself, looking around at the space that was completely mine. No shared decisions, no compromises, no hidden secrets lurking in closets. I thought about where I'd expected to be right now as a newlywed, probably arguing with Norman about whose turn it was to do dishes or planning our first married Christmas. This wasn't that future. But sitting there in my quiet apartment with my own things around me, I realized I was genuinely okay. Maybe even better off having discovered who Norman really was before I legally tied myself to him forever. I was building something authentic now, with people who actually respected and valued me. That felt like the best possible outcome from the worst possible situation.